Hey, this is Sky. Welcome to my YouTube channel. I was at the gym a couple weeks ago talking to a buddy of mine that I hadn't seen in a while. And the entire time we were chatting, he's staring around the room looking at different women, which became annoying to me because as I'm talking with somebody, I appreciate your focus to be on me. If we're having a conversation and you're over here while I'm right here, there's a problem with that. He couldn't take his eyes off of the women in the room. And it felt very juvenile. This is a 40-year-old man. He's always talking about different women, and it dawned on me that this guy probably has a sex addiction. Having a sex addiction is a real thing. So let's talk about sex addiction. I can relate to it in a way where in my mid-20s, see, I was actively interested in getting married and it didn't work out, a whole nother story. And after that relationship, which was a very emotional time for me, I kind of went into a period of just fucking and having fun. Because I was damaged from this previous relationship in many ways. But I still wanted, a part of a relationship is sex, and I wanted that part of a relationship. Casual dates, going out to dinner, those types of things, that's part of a relationship, and I wanted that. But the serious parts of a relationship, the hard parts of a relationship, I wasn't ready for. I was still really damaged. So I was just looking for fun. Now, I wasn't internalizing it in my mind in this way at that time. You know, hindsight's 20/20. We look back on ourselves and realize what our motivations were and what our behavior is. At the time, I just wanted to fuck. And I didn't want any kind of attachments. Now, when you're younger, people tolerate that. Now, I warn younger people, if I got anybody younger out there watching and you're going through this, I warn you. You can have, and everybody, not everybody, but a lot of people go through that kind of phase in their life where they're just sluts for a while, because that's a term that we understand. You're just promiscuous for a little while, sleeping around, playing the field, whatever. Guys and girls do it. It doesn't mean you're a bad person. But be careful doing that for too long. Because you're playing with fire. You're playing with, it's like doing drugs. Sex can turn into a vice in that way. And it did for me. I became content with a certain level of relationship, the superficial level, where it turns superficial when it's not attached to love. See, that's the problem. That's the whole problem. Your little casual dates to dinner and your fucking, afterwards with just random people that you meet, bringing some chick home from the bar and all that, it turns into a vice. You're just chasing this euphoric emotion, what you think is happiness. It's the same thing as drugs. It's obvious how we can turn almost anything into a vice. Food, sex, drugs, alcohol. Anything that provides us with that kind of emotional response, intense emotion, can become a vice. And when we turn sex into a vice, it cheapens the act. You become desensitized to the intimacy involved. It's an incredibly intimate act. You're actually inside of another person, and it just turns into masturbation. You're using others to masturbate. It's funny about masturbation because masturbation is natural, but there's a belief out there amongst certain men, and I've heard this before, and I don't know if I really buy into it or promote it, but I found it fascinating when I heard it, because I never heard this before, so I'll turn it on to you. Maybe you heard it before, maybe you haven't. There's a belief out there amongst some men that masturbation is homosexuality. Because you're tugging on a dick. You can sit there and justify it and say, well, it's mine. You like stroking dicks. At least there's one dick you really enjoy stroking. You're all man, right? But you have a dick that you tug. You like it. You like tugging on a dick. This is the theory. I'm not making this up. When put that way, when somebody told me that one time, I was just like, huh. You know, I'll have to think. Let me get back to you. I need to think about that for a little bit. My own judgment came in when I was talking with my buddy at the gym, and he was looking around at all these women and talking about women, different women he's meeting online and all this stuff. It's a big obsession of his. And I became a little judgmental. And anytime I become judgmental, I have to look within and figure that out. What's wrong with me? Why am I thinking this way? Why am I being judgmental? Where is this coming from? And the judgment was, this guy's a degenerate. And he's a weakling. Those two things. And I realized that that's the way I used to feel about myself. A strong man loves one woman. Sex is a gift that a man gives to the woman that he loves. A strong man protects his seed and wouldn't waste it. A strong man doesn't need vice to chase, to feel better. A strong man's not looking to feel better. A strong man looks for purpose. Oftentimes when we have a purpose in life, your purpose includes a certain element of suffering. But a strong man understands that on the other side of that suffering is greatness. Warriors know this. Warriors know this well. So chasing sex is a certain level of weakness when it's turned into a vice. It's one thing if you're in a committed relationship with your wife and you're fucking all the time. You guys are just horny for each other, can't get enough. Fucking each other raw 2-3 times a day. That happens in the beginning of many marriages. There's nothing wrong with that. I don't believe that scenario is turning sex into a vice, because it's this gift. You have an insatiable hunger for another person. You can't get enough of them. And you just love them so much, you just can't be apart. You gotta make some babies. I mean, that's natural. But when you're at the gym, we used to call it chicken hawking. When you're sitting there staring at butts and boobies. When you're at the bar for 3, 4, 5, 6 hours, simply because you're looking to get laid and you're lonely. That's an addiction. It's a problem. It's a weakness. It will overcome you, it will overtake you. Like any other vice will. You really have to watch out for turning yourself into a slut, men or women. You'll fuck your way into being a shell of a person. You'll fuck all the sensibility and humanity out of yourself. You'll fuck your way into depression. You'll eventually fuck your way into suicide. There's nothing more lonely and desperate and sorrowful and sad than a slut, male or woman. I'm using that term, gender fluid. It's funny because we don't really have a term for male sluts. Maybe women do, I don't know. But men, we don't really, you say a slut, you think of a woman. That's all it is. It's a term for a woman. I'm using it for both, because when we talk about sex addiction, that's usually for men. Women don't come out and say, I have a sex addiction. Because guys will just giggle and be like, oh yeah? Well, what are you doing later? I mean, that's not even a real thing. You're just a slut. Whereas with a guy, it's this medical condition. You go to rehab. I make light of it, but I think it's an incredibly serious problem, and it was something that I had to get a hold of in myself before it ruined me, before it turned me into a weirdo. Seriously, like I'm someone with mental illnesses. I think that that's where sex addiction goes, is mental illness. Like with drug addiction. Drug addiction will lead you to mental illness. It changes the chemistry of your brain. Let's be really careful with this. That's why when I talk to even like young college age dudes that are going through their kind of virile time of their life, they just want to fuck, and I know what it's like to be 20 and wanting to fuck. You got to be careful. You start going into your 30s and you still have that desire to just fuck them and leave them. You're walking down a real dangerous road, a road of mental illness, and you may miss your window, one of the greatest windows you have of meeting your wife is in your 20s and early 30s. Just statistically, it's a wonderful time to get married. Don't waste it by turning yourself into a degenerate loser with one-night stands all the time. It's just food for thought. Thanks for watching.